3 a.m. now in Baghdad. There have been explosions throughout the night in the Iraqi capital. The last we heard about 45 minutes ago. Good evening again, everyone. I'm Aaron Brown at CNN Center in Atlanta. We have shown you some of the pictures of this war as it has been unfolding, but it is pictures we can't show you that lead this hour of our coverage. Wolf Blitzer is in Kuwait City, where that news broke a short time ago. Wolf, good evening to you.
Good evening to you, Aaron, as well. The U.S. Central Command has confirmed 10 people were injured in an attack on the U.S. Army's 101st Airborne Division in Kuwait. It happened about 90 minutes ago. Our colleague from Time Magazine, reporter Jim Lacey, was an eyewitness to the explosions. He has this report. Lacey is telling us that as an eyewitness, 6 of those 10 people were seriously injured. Lacey also tells us that intruders apparently lobbed 2 grenades into a pair of tents housing top officers of the Army's frontline 101st Airborne Division. Lacey himself was only about 20 yards away in a separate tent when the blasts occurred. He helped move 2 of the wounded to an ambulance, and he later told us that the carnage inside those tents was pretty severe. We'll bring you more on this breaking story as soon as we can. We'll also try to get Jim Lacey back on the phone. In the meantime, let's go to Jamie McIntyre at the Pentagon. He has a bit more on this developing story. Jamie?
Well, Wolf, we can't add much more at this point, except, as you said, the U.S. Central Command is confirming that 10 people were injured. Still no reports of any death in this hand grenade attack by some sort of intruder at Camp Pennsylvania. These are those camps that are named after states in the United States that dot the northern Kuwaiti section as troops there pre-positioned to wait to go into Iraq. U.S. troops are continuing to make a lot of progress moving through southern Iraq, even though there's only a few troops up in the northern section. But again, the Pentagon simply says that despite the very, very tight security, it's impossible to defend against every possible kind of terrorist attack, especially if the terrorist or the intruder is willing to sacrifice his own life. Because of the tight security there, the U.S. is pretty confident it will catch the person or persons involved in this act, apparently rolling a hand grenade into a tent housing U.S. troops. So that's about all I can tell you about that. Meanwhile, in the war campaign today, movement both on the ground and in the air. We're told, by the way, that in the air campaign, part of it that you're not seeing involves the A-10 Thunderbolt, affectionately known as the Warthog. This is a tank-killing aircraft, but Pentagon sources tell us it is being used to go after Scud missiles, part of the Scud missile hunt in western Iraq, and it's employing a new munition it hasn't used before, a GBU-12 laser-guided bomb. Normally these A-10 tank killing aircraft carry missiles and use their guns. The U.S. is, as I said, moving forces ahead. The U.S. military says that the lead elements of the invasion force of the past 3 days have pushed 150 miles into Baghdad, having crossed the Euphrates River, but the U.S. won't say exactly how long it'll be before they get to their objective.
Jamie McIntyre at the Pentagon. Jamie, thanks very much. Let's get back to Aaron at the CNN Center in Atlanta. Aaron?
Well, thank you very much. The 101st Airborne, the unit impacted by this attack, this terrorist attack, if you will, they are headquartered at Fort Campbell in Kentucky. It's a legendary unit in the U.S. Army. David Mattingly joins us from Fort Campbell tonight. David, I know you're trying to gather some reaction, and I also know it's early. Tell us what you can.
Well, Aaron, right now, no official word out of Fort Campbell. We've talked to a number of the family readiness group's captains. These are wives of officers who are over there. They have a very distinct and very efficient type of phone system set up where when they have information, they will pass it along so that everybody gets informed just as quickly as possible. Right now, everyone is just clamoring for information. They really don't know exactly what happened there, and they are waiting for some kind of word on exactly who was injured and more details on how the attack would happen. I can tell you that some are just shocked by this. They want to know how something like this could have happened in Kuwait. The bulk of the 101st, we've been told, is on the move inside Iraq. That's where all the concern was at this time. So it is coming as quite a surprise that something like this would be happening right now in northern Kuwait. It normally takes about 2 hours, at least it has in the past, when there has been some kind of casualty for the families to be notified, and we haven't reached that 2-hour window yet. It's possible that the people affected by this still just don't know, Aaron.
David, it's the last time we talked to you, we had just shown pictures of that part of the 101st that it was getting ready to move out, and the families were able to see their loved ones, and the mood was entirely different. We can only imagine the anxiety now and the anger and the frustration behind those gates, and that will only increase as the night goes on and more details become available.
That's right. This is something that they try to prepare for emotionally, but it's something that when it hits home, you never know exactly how to react. The 101st, part of their claim to fame is that they are always ready to deploy anywhere in the world, so they are in a constant state of readiness. Their families constantly ready for their loved ones to be going overseas and always prepared, at least in the back of their minds, for something to happen. But when it happens like this, you still don't have that information. It can be quite maddening at times.
David, thank you. I know you'll continue to do your best to humanely try and get what reaction you can, and of course our hearts are with you and them at Fort Campbell tonight. Thank you, David Mattingly. In Iraq, when night falls, the apprehension rises, as you can imagine, especially with the firepower of the coalition warplanes, which have been directed at Baghdad. CNN's Gary Tuchman is embedded with the U.S. Air Force at a base near Iraq. We won't give you more detail than that. Gary, update us, please, on the air campaign as you can.
Well, Aaron, Jamie McIntyre was just talking about the increased emphasis on the A-10 Thunderbolt Warthog. These are the A-10s right behind me. They're sitting here at this base near the border of Iraq, and they have been flying in and out all night. And here's the latest information we are learning from highly placed Air Force officials. We are being told within the first 48 hours of shock and awe, and that's a time period that will end at 1 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow, there will be 3,500 total sorties, 1,500 of those in the last 24 hours. Of those 1,500, 800 are strike sorties using bombs or missiles. The others are on support missions. A total of 500 aim points in this 24-hour period. Now, aim points are different than targets. One target can have more than one aim point. A presidential palace could have dozens of aim points. So they're looking for 500 aim points in this 24-hour period. According to these sources, aircraft tonight are pounding, this is a quote, pounding on Republican Guard forces. And there's increased emphasis on the western portion of Iraq in the last 24-hour period. The atmosphere here at this base, where there are about 8,000 American servicemen and women, also British military personnel and Australian military personnel, is very professional but also very subdued. We were in the mess hall a few hours ago. That's a plane taking off right now. That's why it's so loud here. This is, of course, what we're hearing constantly while we stand here. But we were in the mess hall a few hours ago. There are probably 300 to 400 military personnel inside. Never have I been in a room where people are eating, where it is so quiet. They talk very quietly. There are very few smiles. Most of the smiles you do see are from pilots who have successfully completed their missions. Aaron, back to you.
Gary, thank you very much. Gary Tuchman at an Air Force base in Kuwait as the air campaign launches from there. Wolf, you're not that far from Camp Pennsylvania, probably an hour or so by drive on a normal day. I can't imagine it is anything but the most difficult of circumstances tonight.
You know, this was one of the things that the U.S. military was very concerned about, not necessarily the Iraqi formal military presence, but the possibility of terrorism. I don't think they anticipated it would develop as quickly as it apparently has. That's the working assumption, according to Jim Lacey, our colleague from Time Magazine. We're going to continue to update our viewers on precisely what happened with those 10 soldiers injured at this base here in Kuwait, 6 of them apparently very seriously. But for the first time since the shock and awe bombing campaign began, the U.S. general in charge of the coalition forces is giving his take on the war. General Tommy Franks is also addressing the uncertainty over the Iraqi president and what that could mean for the fighting. Here's CNN's Tom Mintier.
The commander of coalition forces in Iraq, U.S. General Tommy Franks, says he waited until the third day of operations before facing reporters because he feared it might not only compromise the mission, but endanger the lives of those conducting the war on the ground. The session also included a stern warning for Iraqi soldiers who either have weapons of mass destruction or control their possible use.
We would be hopeful that those with their triggers on these weapons understand, don't use it. Don't use it.
There were also images of oil wells in southern Iraq on fire, apparently sabotaged by fleeing Iraqi troops. But General Franks told reporters the well fires were far fewer than they feared. Just 9 out of a possible 500 were set on fire. The U.S. commander also says that between 1,000 and 2,000 Iraqi soldiers are now surrendering to coalition forces. This satellite photograph, he says, shows more than 700 who had lined up as instructed before the conflict started. They were told to lay down their weapons and form a line that could be identified by coalition forces. General Franks also says he has no idea where Saddam Hussein is, nor whether he is dead or alive. He also quickly added that this war is not about one man, but a regime, one that the general promised would soon be gone. Tom Mintier, CNN, Doha, Qatar.
So there you have it. In the opening moments of the war, the question is this: where's Saddam? But lately, the question has often been among some specialists, does it really matter? The U.S. military's top commander says coalition forces will continue their push into Baghdad regardless of whether Saddam Hussein is dead or alive. CNN's David Ensor reports.
With another tape of Saddam Hussein, Iraqi television sought to emphasize that he remains alive and in control. True or not, U.S. intelligence and military leaders say it matters less and less.
I don't know if he's alive or not, but interestingly, the way we're undertaking this this military operation, it would not be changed irrespective of the location or the life of this one man.
U.S. intelligence officials say communications from the Iraqi leadership are dramatically down since the first airstrikes of the war, including the one that targeted his compound, suggesting to some Saddam is probably alive and most worried about staying that way.
He doesn't know if it was a human who betrayed him or it was a technical system that betrayed him. And so as a result, his MO is always go to ground, go into hiding, rely only on your trusted emissaries.
Besides tracking Iraqi leaders, U.S. intelligence officials say they have several key goals now: to protect and help U.S. troops, to negotiate surrenders and stand-downs of Iraqi units, to watch Iraq's weapons of mass destruction, and not only to keep those weapons from being used against American soldiers.
One of the great concerns that the administration has is that in the collapse of the regime, you may have individuals who will take some of the weapons of mass destruction and transfer them to other countries or to terrorist groups.
The U.S. military dealt with one such group Friday, bombing the northern Iraqi enclave held by Ansar al-Islam, a fundamentalist group the U.S. says has ties to al-Qaeda. Special forces and U.S. intelligence moved in after the bombs.
Though publicly U.S. officials are playing down the importance at this point of Saddam Hussein, they would still very much like to get him. Analysts argue if he dies, the regime could quickly come apart at the seams, potentially saving many lives: American, Iraqi, British, and others. David Ensor, CNN, Washington.
But the bottom line right now here in the Persian Gulf is clearly no one knows whether Saddam Hussein is alive or dead, and if he is alive, how much control he has right now. Aaron?
Well, the big picture here changes not one bit. Coalition forces continue to make their way toward Baghdad. They're pushing ahead. The president is up at Camp David. It is legitimately a working weekend for the president. He consulted with a key ally today, and he met with his war council, his war advisors today. Back at the White House is the press corps. CNN's White House correspondent Dana Bash has the duty tonight. Dana, good evening to you.
Good evening, Aaron. Well, you're right. The president is at Camp David at this hour and will be there all weekend long. And the president really, we are told, enjoys Camp David. He likes to get there, especially on beautiful weekends like this, to exercise. We are told that he was planning to exercise there. But as you said, it is a working weekend. He met with his war council, as it is now called, his national security team. He met for about 90 minutes with them this morning. There you see a photo. It was a full crowd there, almost almost the entire War Council was there, including the Vice President, the Secretary of State, his National Security Advisor, Condoleezza Rice, all meeting, discussing the battlefront, what is going on there. And the President, we are told, after that, did stay in close contact through his National Security Advisor with what is going on in Iraq throughout the day. But the President also made it very clear today in his weekly radio address that there is a little bit of concern about the fact that Americans might think this war will be very short. He tried to sort of tamp down expectations on that, making it clear that it could be very long and very dangerous. The other thing that he said is that although they want to try to minimize civilian casualties in Iraq, it might be very difficult.
American and coalition forces face enemies who have no regard for the conventions of war or rules of morality. Iraqi officials have placed troops and equipment in civilian areas, attempting to use innocent men, women, and children as shields for the dictator's army. I want Americans and all the world to know that coalition forces will make every effort to spare innocent civilians from harm.
And the other thing the President did today, we are told, is phone his top ally in this effort, the British Prime Minister, Tony Blair. We are told by the White House that the two men spoke for about 30 minutes about the progress on the war front. They also discussed, we are told, the huge humanitarian effort that awaits them. Aaron.
Dana, thank you. Dana Bash at the White House. Wolf, the President underscoring again the need, or the attempt at least, to avoid civilian casualties. There were some pictures on Arab TV, as I'm sure you saw there, that would be very inflammatory. That's the kind of thing the White House worries about.
They're deeply worried about it, and especially concerned that these kinds of pictures, the huge airstrikes, the reaction in the Arab world from what happened in Baghdad, they're concerned that it could generate perhaps more terrorism. That's a source of great concern. Everyone is going to be watching that. By the way, CNN, of course, will have all the latest developments on the war, including reaction from the highest levels. Tomorrow, I'll talk to the top man at the Defense Department, the Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld. I'll ask him all the latest. I'll ask him about the latest developments in the war. What are the next steps? We'll have him on a special late edition, Strike on Iraq. That will begin, of course, tomorrow, Sunday, noon Eastern. Across the United States today, freedom of speech led to urban gridlock. Coming up, Broadway and a cast of thousands. It's a much different sentiment on U.S. military bases. Next, anxious families share the burden of waiting.
Where do you get your pet's flea, tick, and heartworm medications?
Oh, what a hassle. I take the dog, drive to the vet's office, then sit and wait.
I just call 1-800-PET-MEDS, and my pet's medications are delivered right to my door.
Wow, I paid a lot at the vet's office.
And I paid a lot less.
1-800-PET-MEDS guarantees the lowest price on all your pet's medications. Order online or call now.
CNN puts you alongside the troops with soldiers.
Walter Rogers, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, Ryan Chilcote.
With sailors.
Frank Buckley, Kira Phillips, Gary Stryker.
With airmen.
Gary Tutton, Bob Franken.
With Marines.
Jason Bellini, Art Harris, Martin Savage.
Plus, CNN joins forces with top news organizations and our network of affiliates to put more reporters in the region than anyone. No one gets you closer than CNN, the most trusted name in news.
Well, Camp Pendleton, California, military families have been clustering around TV sets. They are anxiously awaiting whatever news they can get from the front lines. Others tie yellow ribbons. They pray for their loved ones to come home, as do we all. CNN's Thelma Gutierrez has been talking with some of those military families at Camp Pendleton, the huge Marine base there, and she joins us live with the latest. Thelma?
Yes, you're right, Aaron. It is a huge base. There are about 40,000 Marines who are based here during peacetime. Family members, as you had mentioned, Aaron, sitting here on pins and needles waiting for any news. And of course, lately, the news has not been very good. Today, things have been relatively quiet. I've talked to some of the Marines here right at the entrance of the base, and you get a sense of how somber the mood is. After all, this is the base, which is home to the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force, which is among the first to cross into Iraq, and now news that 5 of 7 U.S. deaths were actually based here. That brings the total coalition U.S. death toll up to 21. You can see right there the flag flies at half-staff. The Department of Defense released the names of those who were killed in action on the 21st. They are 22-year-old Lance Corporal Jose Gutierrez of Los Angeles and 30-year-old 2nd Lieutenant Theral Childers of Harrison, Mississippi, both based here at Camp Pendleton. Family members of the Marines, 2 Marines who were actually killed in the CH-4.
Hate the loss, but you know, I think it's how do I say this? I think it's kind of like a this war. I think is kind of like an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. The Gulf Desert Storm War took less than a year. This one I hope will take even less than that.
Well, that is, we lost Thelma out there, but the essence of that is pretty clear. These are difficult days, and there are more difficult days to come out at Camp Pendleton and Fort Campbell, Kentucky tonight, and a lot of other places where American families of servicemen are stationed, and they are worried. It's been an active day around the world where the war is concerned. Wolf, you're well aware of how the international community has reacted as well.
A lot of unease there and around the world as coalition forces sweep into Baghdad, demonstrations sweeping across the globe. Anti-war protesters rallied in cities from Barcelona to Jakarta and many points in between. Thousands of peace activists turned out on the streets of London earlier today. Some waved signs saying, "Bring our boys home" or "Blair out." The British Prime Minister Tony Blair has been one of President Bush's strongest allies, if not his strongest ally. In Gaza, meanwhile, some 10,000 Palestinians flooded the streets. Many carried signs declaring their solidarity with Saddam Hussein. And in New Zealand, at least 4,000 protesters surrounded the Australian embassy and shouted slogans denouncing the Australian Prime Minister, John Howard. Howard has committed 2,000 Australian forces to the war on Iraq. Aaron?
And of course, it was not just overseas that these protests have been going on. There were major protests, large protests in a number of big U.S. cities today. Peace activists in New York and in Washington and San Francisco. Chicago's been the scene of major anti-war protests now 3 nights running. Today, though, peace activists squared off against people who support the policy of the war in downtown. Chicago is a tough little town. Chicago police had to work pretty hard to keep the two sides apart. The largest of the anti-war rallies took place in New York today. The police estimates are about 200,000 police activists marched from Times Square downtown to Washington Square Park. Some of those activists did clash with police. Protesters clashed with protesters on the other side as well. It was, in fact, in many respects, a very nasty day in Midtown and downtown New York. We're joined now by Whitney Casey, who was covering that for us in New York. Whitney, good evening to you.
Good evening, Aaron. Well, behind me right here, Chief Esposito and some of the police officers here in New York, they're just now deciding that this protest is over. There are about 300 people that are still here in Washington Square Park, a much smaller number than started today. The police estimates that you said about 200,000. Some of the protesters estimate about 300,000. I'm just going to show you a little bit across the street right here. This is where some of the protesters, there are only a few of them here now, about 200 to 300 in Washington Square Park, still remain. The police here are just starting to disperse. They say that if they leave, they feel that maybe the protesters will go home. But it was started out as a much more peaceful day. There were those 200,000 people walking 40 blocks all the way from Midtown down here to Washington Square Park. At about 4 o'clock, when the protest was supposed to end, there were only 2 arrests. But after they stayed here in Washington Square Park, up until tonight now, those numbers have increased to 84 arrests. And also, I had a police officer just tell me over here he was hit in the face. And so it started out very calm earlier today. Let's take a look at that.
A slew of arrests and scuffles with police as anti-war demonstrators grow impatient with their resistance. A march through the streets of New York down Broadway ends 30 blocks into Washington Square Park. Myra Howard came today with her husband and 16-month-old daughter.
I think we're in the war for oil. I think we want to monopolize the oil, and that's why we're over there.
Student Lena Eberhardt is visiting from Portland, Oregon.
I'm really concerned about the long-term effects of what we're doing, and how the global effects, and how we're taking so many steps back that all the work that people are doing, it's like they have to start over all the time.
Some demonstrators using satire to make their point.
You know, he's the tin man after oil, and you have Bush, who, you know, I hate to disparage a public figure, but he's not the brightest president we've had.
The march that started midday proceeded down dozens of blocks without conflict. But police made arrests at the end of the route when some protesters wouldn't leave.
As you can see, the police behind me right here, this is the chief. He's just told me right now that they are pulling out of here. As of right now, 84 arrests have been made and 11 police officers were mildly injured, Aaron. But again, those numbers from 200,000 to 300,000 very peaceful protesters earlier in the day. Back to you, Aaron.
Whitney, thank you. Whitney Casey, who's in New York City tonight. We note that most, if not all of the protesters at these anti-war demonstrations very carefully pointed out that their complaint is with the policy, with the president, but not with the troops overseas. And some rallies, like one that took place in North Carolina today, are organized specifically to support the troops. This is Raleigh, North Carolina. The crowd gathered outside the state capitol in Raleigh in what was billed as a rally for America, some of them singing "God Bless America." As you can see, others holding up American flags, some even painting their faces red, white, and blue. It was a day to demonstrate your feelings in the United States and in many ways around the world. Coming up, we'll take you back inside Iraq after the Iraqi army fled, in some cases, from coalition troops. Got down to some target practice today. It got serious business. Marty Savage of our staff was right in the middle of it. There are concerns today about the weather. Sandstorms building, and we will check on that as well. And around the United States and around the world, it continues to be a day of protest, and we'll continue following that strain as this broadcast continues.
The strike on Iraq continues, and no one takes you closer than CNN. Live throughout the day, stay with CNN, the most trusted name in news. Tuesday, 8 o'clock, the New York Times and Discovery Communications launch the Discovery Times channel with terror's next wave. At 8, see how Al-Qaeda reinvented itself after 9/11. At 9, witness terrorism changing the lives of Afghan children. Plus, New York Times journalist Thomas Friedman examines a region in conflict. Terror's Next Wave, Tuesday, beginning at 8 on the Discovery Times channel. Discovery Times channel is available on DirecTV's Total Choice Plus. Call 1-800-DIRECTV today.
If someone had told me when I was part of the corporate world that my second career would be raising alpacas, I wouldn't have believed them. I'd never raised livestock in my life. All I'd raised was a dog. But I guess falling in love can change your life, and falling in love with alpacas certainly changed mine. And 7 years later, I can tell you that it's the most wonderful lifestyle experience.
Visit an alpaca farm today. To locate an alpaca farm near you, go to alpacainfo.com or call 1-800-213-9522.
CNN, the most trusted name in news.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Heidi Collins at CNN Center. Checking the latest developments now at this hour. A reporter for Time magazine says intruders lobbed grenades into 2 tents housing top officers of the Army's 101st Airborne Division in northern Kuwait. The reporter tells CNN at least 10 people were wounded, 6 of them seriously. Meanwhile, in Baghdad, and you are looking at a live picture now, 3:34 a.m. there. Aside from scattered explosions heard the last several hours, it has been relatively calm in the Iraqi capital. Coalition troops have pushed 150 miles into Iraqi territory now and have moved beyond the Euphrates River. They've reached the outskirts of Basra, the second biggest city in Iraq. Meanwhile, British and U.S. troops ran into some resistance in Qasr, a port city captured yesterday before all was secure. A knowledgeable U.S. official tells CNN that reports of the death of the man known as Chemical Ali are wrong. Chemical Ali, whose real name is Ali Hassan Majid, played a role in an attack on Kurds in 1988 and may be running some of Iraq's defenses. Protesters both for and against the war in Iraq took to the streets again today. In Chicago, demonstrators from both sides were kept apart by police. In Los Angeles, a large crowd gathered outside the CNN bureau in what seemed to be more of an anti-media protest. And in New York, hundreds of thousands of anti-war protesters marched from Times Square to Washington Square Park. And those are the headlines making news at this hour. You're watching CNN, your most trusted source for news. Now back to our coverage of Strike on Iraq.
There's been a grenade attack at a U.S. military base in northern Kuwait, not far away from where I am right now. I'm Wolf Blitzer reporting live from Kuwait City. We're told by the U.S. military's Central Command 10 U.S. Army soldiers from the famed 101st Airborne Division have been injured, 6 of them seriously. They've been moved to a military field hospital for treatment. No word on the perpetrators. There is a suspicion among U.S. military personnel at Camp New Jersey and Camp Pennsylvania, where these attacks occurred, at 2 tents housing senior officers of the 101st Airborne. There is a suspicion of terrorism, but no official word yet on what was the cause of this attack. Grenades involved. Let's go to CNN's David Mattingly. He's at the home base, the headquarters of the 101st. They're called the Screaming Eagles at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. David?
Wolf, here at Fort Campbell, still our attempts to contact the post public affairs officers have been unsuccessful. We have talked to a number of organized groups of wives and spouses here at the camp, all expressing a great deal of surprise that something like this would happen in northern Kuwait when the bulk of the 101st seems to be in more danger on the move in Iraq tonight. Joining me, though, are a couple of wives who are from the 1st Brigade. Your husbands are with the 1st Brigade, and the last you heard, your husbands were at Camp Pennsylvania. What have you heard tonight?
Just the news that there were the grenade attacks, and that's it. And we feel pretty confident that our husbands are safe, that they weren't anywhere near there, but we feel for this.
This brings into focus the issue of the media coverage. You're finding out in the media and not from official sources yet. Does that bother you, or does it make it more stressful for you in times like this?
Just the specifics, you know, because you hear, like, when the missile was launched, and I was like, well, what? It said Kuwait. I was like, well, what camp? You know, there are several different ones, and, you know, our husbands were at Camp Pennsylvania, and with the grenades, we don't know who it was or...
The 101st is always prepared to move out. You're always prepared for your husbands to have to get shipped out somewhere. You're prepared for this mentally, but when something like this happens, can you truly be prepared?
No, you never can truly be prepared for what's going to happen. It happens, and I think you just have to take it as it comes, and you have to deal with it, and you have to rely on your family and your friends in your community, in your family support community.
Since the Gulf War, the Army's done a great deal of work to try to support families. Do you feel like you're getting the support that you need right now in this time when you need this kind of information?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. I have a great support system, family and friends, and there are thousands of wives here that are going through the same things that we are.
And we're all waiting for that information tonight. So, ladies, thank you very much for joining us. Wolf, back to you.
All right, I'm sure there's a lot of anxious families over there at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. We'll continue to follow the story, bring the latest. We're attempting to get back in touch with Jim Lacey of Time Magazine, our colleague there. He's embedded with the 101st. He's the one who called us with first word of this grenade attack at these 2 tents at this camp just north in the northern part of Kuwait. Aaron?
Thanks, Wolf. Just listening to those two young women talk about their support system, given the nature of modern communications and how we have been able to literally show the 101st and a lot of other units as they go about their business. I suspect they have an entire nation of support who must feel like they know the men of the 101st. We also have come to know the fighter pilots who are based all over the Gulf and in the Red Sea too. In this case, the USS Abraham Lincoln. Those pilots have been flying round-the-clock missions, unleashing significant doses of damage. How do you like the way that we said that one? Kyra Phillips is on board this aircraft carrier with its crew of 5,700 planes dropping bombs and firing off missiles based up there in Everett, Washington, north of Seattle. Nuclear-powered aircraft carrier with about 5,700 men and women on board. As we said, CNN's Kyra Phillips is embedded with that unit, and she has filed for us today.
Well, welcome to Shock and Awe from the USS Abraham Lincoln. Let's take a look at these pictures from not long ago when the first strikes began. Now, pilots tell me they were fired upon constantly, a number of threats in the air that they faced, threats such as SAMs, surface-to-air missiles, old Soviet MiGs, also lots of AAA fire.
It looked like Star Wars out there when we were going in. Mainly we're above the AAA threat, so that was nice to stay above that. But there was a lot of stuff coming up at us tonight, and F-14D Super Tomcat with the systems it has to offer, that keeps us safe while we're doing this job.
Steve, how about you? What did you see? What were you feeling as soon as you got in country?
I was amazed at the sheer size of this operation, the number of people talking on the radio, but also for the hour prior to us getting in country and dropping our bombs, explosions, as far as I could see, going off probably 2 or 3 every second for a full hour. It was quite amazing. I've never seen anything like it. As we pressed in, like Lucas said, we saw a number of SAMs, some ballistically launched, and then as we pressed in close to Baghdad, some that were actually guided. Fortunately, thanks to the people that were out there with us who helping to keep us safe from those threats while we were flying in that threat envelope. They did their job and our systems worked, and thanks to our maintainers who gave us good systems in the first place. They work long hours, and they you don't get to see them very often, but they're with us there too. And it's awesome, the product that they gave us, and we all appreciate that.
Kadar, Lieutenant Steve Uries, gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll continue to stay here aboard USS Abraham Lincoln, continuing to cover the campaign as it goes down through the day and through the night out here in the Persian Gulf. Back to you.
That's Kyra Phillips aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln. These embedded correspondents are able to give us these snapshots, if you will, of various aspects of the war. It's our job here to try and take all these puzzle pieces and give you the broad look at what is happening in Iraq. Miles O'Brien joins us now to help look at that, to take a look at where, after these first few days, the coalition forces are. Miles?
Yeah, let's put as many pieces together as we can here, and to help me do that, we have some good help. General Wesley Clark, retired U.S. Army, former NATO Supreme Commander. General Clark, good to have you with us.
Thanks, Miles.
Let's take a look at a wide picture, wide map of the region, showing us a good portion of Kuwait and Iraq. I want to start in the right-hand corner, which is a Basra region, and let's talk about the U.S. Marines and British troops there and what we know about where they are and what they did.
What we know, Miles, is the U.S. and British forces crossed the border from Kuwait. They were accompanied by apparently an air assault and maybe a naval operation to take the oil rigs and the oil pumping station at Qasr. But the British Marines, the British forces seem to have been on the right flank. The Marines seem to have been on the left flank. The Marines took the oil fields, the part of the Ramallah fields near Basra. They secured the airfield. They began destroying vehicles. They met some tough resistance from some hard-nosed Iraqi security elements inside Basra. They backed off after securing the bridges, and the British forces have been left to negotiate the surrender of Basra while the Marines have regrouped and are preparing to head north toward Baghdad.
All right, that gives you that right-hand quadrant there. Let's talk about some of the heavy armor here. They started right about here Where do we know about where this heavy cavalry unit is right now, General?
Well, it's been released that they're somewhere up near Nasiriyah,
which is right about there.
And we believe that they have secured, one of the elements of that division has secured the bridge over the Euphrates River there. Now, where they go from there, of course, is speculative. We don't have any knowledge of the plans, but it is about halfway to Baghdad, and they're clearly putting pressure on the Iraqi defensive elements there.
All right, now let's move a little bit further over to the left here. We'll give you a sense of an airborne unit, the 101st Airborne specifically. You could give us a sense of where we think they may be.
Well, what we know of the 101st Airborne right now is that at least one brigade has been moving in trucks and in Humvees up probably to the west flank of the 3rd Infantry Division, probably moving up toward those captured air bases at H2 and H3.
That would put them right up in there, right? And then
probably not there yet. But
they're not there yet, but where would they go from there? Probably straight into the north and straight to Baghdad?
Probably would be the force in the north. There's got to be a way to get that northern element in there, and as you know, the 4th Infantry Division has been officially pulled off the mission of going through Turkey to come in from the north.
All right, let's move the map down now to Nasiriyah, because you were telling me some interesting things about armored doctrine. In other words, the rules of engagement, according to the U.S. Army, on how you move armor. In this case, what you do when you come to a river and how you deal with bridges. Give us a sense of what happened on the ground here, General.
Well, we know that there was some resistance from the Iraqis there, that the forces that we put on the ground did not do a tank charge or World War II-style infantry assault to try to overrun the Iraqi forces. Instead, using our superior firepower and communications, we put artillery fire on, and when that didn't loosen them up, we brought in A-10s, and we've heard already today from some of the A-10 pilots who flew that mission. And they were successful in breaking the resistance, and apparently we've moved at least some elements of the 3rd Infantry Division across the Euphrates. Now, we don't know whether the whole division will go across or whether the division will split and go up on both sides of the Euphrates, but at some point, to get to Baghdad, you got to get across the Euphrates.
So it's possible you might have tanks going up both sides of that riverbank. What's the reason behind all that?
You might, because you might get greater depth. On the other hand, you could also make the argument in classic military strategy, never allow a river to split your avenue of approach. So it can be played either way, and we just don't know, and that's the commander's call.
All right, one final point before we get away. There is a report we're trying to chase down that there may have been a skirmish as close as 95 miles from Baghdad in a place called Najaf. We're trying to get you some more information on that. That's Najaf. That would put U.S. forces a lot closer. General Clark, just briefly, that seems like rapid advance.
It does, but again, this is open terrain, and if there's no resistance from the enemy, there's nothing to stop you from moving at 20, 25 miles an hour. It's the enemy that determines the pace of advance, so it's very possible that this 3rd Infantry Division or some other force has raced north after seizing the crossing site at Nasiriyah and encountered the next speed bump, that Iraqi force at Najaf.
All right, the big picture from a man who knows how to synthesize it, put the pieces together for you. We still got a puzzle left, Aaron, but we're working on it.
Well, and as the general reminds me often, this is the easy part, the relatively easy part. Getting from the border to this point, it gets a lot nastier, or might, in the days ahead. Wolf.
There's no doubt this is a breathtaking story, Aaron. The developments simply are coming in, not necessarily by the hour, almost by the minute. Let's go to CNN's Carl Penhall. He's in northern Kuwait right now with yet another dramatic development. Carl?
Yes, Wolf, just a few moments ago, the all clear was sounded. That was following an attack by an Iraqi missile on one of the U.S. base camps here, close to the border with Iraq, but on the Kuwaiti side. I heard, I was asleep at the time, but we were awoken in the tent where I'm sleeping by the blast of 2 Patriot missiles as they went up into the atmosphere, U.S. Patriot missiles that went into the atmosphere to intercept an incoming Iraqi missile. Commanders here at the base have told me that that Iraqi missile was successfully destroyed in the atmosphere, and following an alert, a chemical alert that lasted some 40 or 50 minutes, the all clear has sounded and there has been no detection of any chemicals present. Commanders haven't been able to say yet what type of missile it was. First indications were that it may have been a Scud. They're now revising that and trying to analyze what kind of missile it may have been. But certainly, Wolf, that missile didn't impact the ground. it was successfully intercepted by the Patriot missiles. Wolf.
Carl, there have been a few other missiles that have come into Kuwait successfully intercepted by this new generation of Patriot air defense missiles earlier within the past 48 hours. But the 40 minutes that you were waiting to get the all clear, was everybody in their full chemical and biological protective gear?
No, Wolf, because we're underneath tents, because we're underneath canvas, there was no need to put on the so-called MOP suits, the biological chemical suits that are packed with charcoal. Those are primarily for use when one is out in the open. The first order is to get under cover. Since I myself and most of the American troops here were asleep at the time, there was no need to get under cover. We were simply woken by the sound of the Patriot missiles, put on the masks, and waited there. And as you correctly say, yes, there have been previous Iraqi missile attacks in this region of northern Kuwait, but my recollection is that the last of those was before the start of the ground war, before American troops crossed the berm into Iraq. And I think the fact that Iraqi missiles are still coming in now is not taking anybody by surprise. Obviously, the Patriot missiles were on standby, but has left some of the commanders here scratching their heads, trying to figure out what kind of range these Iraqi missiles are and from what position they may have been fired, considering American forces are so far into Iraq now. Wolf.
Carl Penhall, we were showing our viewers some details, some graphics showing the Scud missile. Unclear at this point whether or not that was a Scud missile. They're continuing to investigate. The Iraqis have other kinds of missiles still in their arsenal, including, as all of our viewers remember, those El Samud 2 missiles, half of the arsenal was destroyed by UN inspectors, but others presumably were not. We'll continue to follow that story, and we're going to get back to Carl when he gets some more information. We're going to take a quick break, but up next, the road to the Final Four in full swing. But is March Madness taking on a different meaning this year? Stay with us.